Populism has become a hotly discussed topic in debates on the current state of politics. While some are of the view that populism offers the promise of democratic renewal, bringing new actors and policies into the political system, others view it as a threat to a functioning democracy. So, contested issues surrounding populism, how populism is in fact changing the political discourse in South Africa, and the relationship between populism and democracy are just some of the topics that we will be exploring further today with political analyst Sandile Swana, who is joining us via video link. Sandile, good morning. Thank you for joining us on the SABC at this hour.
Good morning to you, Lizelle, and to the viewers of SABC.
Sandile, for context sake, perhaps you could talk to the phenomenon occurring, the drivers of populism in a post-apartheid South Africa, just looking at the rise in populist movements given the underlying gaps in our democratic politics.
Yes, I think that, Lizelle, we must first understand that there could be popular struggles. As an example, for instance, if somebody were to start a campaign about early childhood education and things like that, it would probably be a popular struggle. A populist struggle often seeks to win votes for that particular political movement. And what has been observed is that a populist political movement can be either right-wing or left-wing. As an example, it's very interesting in South Africa that today you have South Africans have often defined left-wing or right-wing, whether you are pro-white or pro-black. I'm just making an example. Then you find people coming along and saying, let's have a Zulu secessionist movement. In other words, let's have the KZN province or Zululand becoming an independent province in South Africa, or even an independent state. Others coming saying the Western Cape must be independent. So those types of people who are proposing a dismantling of the architecture of the South African state are populists. This is not a popular movement expressing the genuine will of the people, but it's a populist movement that people who have not understood the fundamental issues of poverty, inequality, and unemployment then attribute that to ethnic problems.
Well, Sandile, thank you for setting that context. I want to delve into, some of the rhetoric around religion, traditional healers, crime, the stance on crime, and in just a moment, perhaps we could look at the relationship at this point between populism and democracy, and how now populism is changing the political discourse, affecting political behavior as well. What's been the reaction from some of the ruling party, the more dominant parties, in relation to the phenomenon occurring for the 2024 elections?
Well, okay, so there are recent reactions. One of them, for instance, would be, well, how have the bigger parties reacted to the emergence of MK Party? MK Party, for instance, proposes that we need to remove the constitution as a whole and establish a new constitution where there is supremacy of parliament, not supremacy of the constitution. They want an unfettered majoritarian democracy, which then means that the businesses and the elite classes, including the DA and the ANC, would then be prompted to launch countermeasures against that. You've seen the ANC going to fetch retired politicians. You've seen the DA launching a banning the flag advert and things like that. We are not saying those movements are effective or those steps are effective or not effective against populism. So you'll see that there's a move by the MK Party to say, let's remove the Roman Dutch law basis and start our legal system on indigenous laws. Let's change the role of chiefs. Then we have the old question of expropriation of land without compensation, where all land will belong to the state or belong to the chiefs or tribal authorities. So that's where the battle is. Now, the question of how the leading parties are reacting, they are trying also to popularize themselves and get more votes, but we know historically that they've been getting less and less votes, both the DA and the ANC.
Let's unpack that further, because it is about being anti-establishment. I want to then look at the ripple effects, populism and nationalism, what the implications are for South Africa, and from your vantage point, how far populism can go in our 30-year dispensation of democracy and beyond.
People must never underestimate populism. For instance, Brexit in the US, in the UK. Brexit has actually happened. The UK has left Brexit. But when empirical studies are done after Brexit, it was discovered that actually there was no merit in the case whatsoever. It was a populist movement, well-financed and orchestrated by vested interests, and it actually happened. So just like in South Africa, you had some form of populist movement that was orchestrated by Verwoerd and Malan, which was apartheid in Germany and Nazism. So you must not say because people are populist and maybe to you and to the establishment they are irrational. Don't think that they cannot overthrow the establishment. They can succeed in overthrowing the establishment. As an example, you can have, although there is no empirical evidence to support this, to support that this is a good idea, the expropriation of land without compensation and the nationalization of land in South Africa. It can happen in South Africa.
And so, Sandile, I mean, the impact of this obviously affects not only South Africa, but South Africa in relation to the continent and the world at large, also given this shifting geopolitical landscape and the rise of more populist sentiments the world over. Talk to us from your vantage point about the impact of populism beyond our national borders.
Well, obviously there are things that are beyond our borders. As an example, when Trump started attacking China,
yes,
and eventually started a trade war with China, to say jobs must be moved from China to the U.S., American companies must manufacture in the U.S. and so on. But historically, the U.S. has said there must be open international trade. So, but now when they are being beaten in that competition and they want to create jobs in the US, then they are closing the economy down for the Chinese people, Chinese nation in America and so on and so forth. So sometimes it takes that form. Now, what has also happened is that you have had the Ukraine, the Russia, NATO, Ukraine war. You've had the Israeli genocide case and apartheid and all sorts of things like that. All of those things are polarizing the world, and populism is there. And what we're saying about populism in this case is that hard facts policies that are supported by empirical evidence are not there. Even here in South Africa, people who've historically supported apartheid in South Africa and white South Africans more broadly will automatically, what I've noticed, this is my observation, automatically want to support Israel, which...
Because, Sandile, actually, let me get further into some of the rhetoric. I wanted to actually touch on the issues of xenophobia, just looking at how it obviously impacts dynamics beyond our border. You've got the tough crime and tough stance on crime rhetoric that's also coming out, given the level of trust in our police system as well. I wonder if we could look at the role of evangelical churches, religion, and some of the political strategies that has been employed, the role of traditional leaders, some of the causes for concern, or the strides that have been taken on that front. What are you observing in relation to that?
The issue of xenophobia, it has been there in the UK and other parts of Europe, and it has got a long history where people are under economic stress, that they start finding scapegoats, and in South Africa they will blame Zimbabweans, blame fellow Africans, and want them kicked out. But economists will tell you straight away that the type of unemployment we have has got nothing to do with foreign nationals. It has got to do with poor macroeconomic policy for the past 15 years. And the solution will only lie there, not with what you do with foreigners. So the issue of the issue of promotion of the status of traditional healers, traditional medicine, it has always had merit on its own. But you may find that our existing government has not been able to go along and promote it and professionalize it properly in the manner that they've failed in a lot of other respects, whether there is the land reform program, the eradication of apartheid. So now during elections, especially these elections, that there's so much hardship all over South Africa, then all sorts of things start to be blamed for the wrong reasons, without going to the correct policy questions that need to be addressed. So you could say religion, this or the other, but the issue being that policy and the implementation of policy and the employment of correct people in the state is actually the root cause of the problem. It's not the churches. Let me then add this, that you have had people like the Royal Bafokeng who've done very well as a tribal authority or a traditional kingdom. Economically, they've done very well, but those models have not been transmitted to other kingdoms. I think there's about 13 of them, and so on. So those are not failings of ethnicity and so on. Those are failings of the leadership of the moment, the ruling party, that has failed to get those things off the ground.
Well, Sandile, thank you. We have run out of time. I'm going to leave the conversation there. Thank you very much for joining us at this hour. Obviously, looking at some of the dynamics unfolding, we're seeing that, what's coming to the fore, these elections, it's less about ideology, it's more about identity politics. So we'll continue to explore and really unpack what that means in relation to South Africa at large. But we obviously explored contested issues just surrounding populism, the relationship between populism and democracy with political analyst Sandile Swana. Again, thank you to him for joining us and unpacking that further.